Hi, I'm John Messina, Athletic Director, St. Lucie West Centennial High School, and welcome to another edition of Hey Coach. We have a special guest today, a good friend of mine, a well-respected athletic director and assistant principal throughout the state, Mr. Tim Tharp, who's over at Southfork High School. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, and I always ask everybody, how do you think we got the name Hey Coach? And it has to do with one of your coaches.
Could it be for hollering "Hey Coach" from the sideline, maybe, or something
Close.
like that? Good title, though. I like it.
Coach.
So I'll just call you Coach through the whole time. How about that?
All right. Call me anything you want. You're a baseball coach and good friend of mine, Tony Milizia. We used to go to all the conferences together. When we would go to the seminars and the clinics, we let everybody go in there first. And Tony and I would go in the back and yell, "Hey, Coach." And everybody would turn around. But that's good. But I'm glad to have you, Tim. We've been friends for a long time. And let's talk about your background first, okay? Give us a little bit of your background.
Well, I tell you, I'm in my 30th year, actually, of high school athletics. I started coaching 1986 and teaching. Actually, I'm a Palm Beach County guy, raised in Palm Beach County, Grove Park Elementary, Hal Watkins Junior High, it was back then, Palm Beach Gardens High School. Came back after playing some ball in college and got an opportunity to begin coaching and teaching at Twin Lakes High School in 1986. Coached football and baseball there with Ben McCoy, who was kind of like a almost childhood idol per se in the Palm Beach County area. From there I went to Pensacola, moved there, met my wife, moved to Pensacola, coached and taught at Escambia High School in Pensacola for 8 years.
And you went to the state playoffs in baseball.
We actually won it in 91. Yeah, we won it in 91. That was a great experience. Roger Mayo was the head coach there at that time, and it still is, actually. He's actually the AD and the head coach there. So I was at Escambia for 8 years. A friend of mine, Joey Wiles, got the head football job at St. Augustine High School in 1996. So we'd always kind of wanted to work together. Had an opportunity to go over there. Coached at St. Augustine and taught for 2 years, and did actually kind of got out of the baseball. When I got over there, I thought I was just going over to coach football. The athletic director asked me if I'd be interested in taking over the softball program, and I just, it ended up working out. So I did football and softball for 2 years there, became the head coach, left there, became the head coach at Palm Beach Gardens High School, head football coach in 1998. Through 04, went from there right into administration as an assistant principal for a year and a half. From there, ended up going to Vero Beach High School as the athletic director in the summer of 2006. And then I went to Southfork in 2011 and currently there. So I've been around Florida a little bit in some different capacities, but have enjoyed it. It's all been at the high school level, and it's been good. I've enjoyed it.
And you had a special roommate in college that became a little bit famous too,
Actually did. Mike McCarthy, head coach of the Green Bay Packers, and I roomed together for a period of time out in Iowa. We had both played football at Salem College in West Virginia. And there was a changeover in staff there, and it was kind of a remarkable story because 17 of us from Salem, the offensive coordinator ended up taking the head football job at Iowa Wesleyan College. So you're in West Virginia from Palm Beach County. We ended up going out there. Mike and I roomed together. He didn't stay. He ended up leaving after a period of time. But it was neat. And then here's Mike, head coach of the Green Bay Packers.
And you're here talking to me right
And
now.
I'm here sitting at the table on Hey Coach.
Hey Coach. So
good guy though. Mike was a great guy, and I tell you what he was a great athlete. Mike was a great athlete, great basketball player. Came from Pittsburgh. His dad owned a bar there in Pittsburgh, and just kind of that blue collar Irish Catholic background, and good guy. And having a ton of success.
Let's go back even further. What got you involved in education?
Well, I was one of the people that when they finally tell you, you're not good enough to play anymore. I would love to sit here for all the teachers and say, I wanted to be an educator and those type of things. When they told me I wasn't good enough to play anymore, made the decision that the next closest thing was to get involved in coaching, the influence that coaches have, on young people's lives and those kind of things. So really, I went into it to gain a foothold in a coaching career and have been fortunate enough to sustain it, for 30 years.
Now, mentioning that, who had the greatest influence on you getting into coaching?
Actually, there's a few along the way. Okay. And when I look at it and kind of looking at a career, first of all, my dad coached me kind of growing up all through the Little Leagues and the Pop Warner and those kind of things. So I was kind of although he wasn't necessarily a high school coach or a collegiate coach, grew up in a kind of a coach's home. That kind of probably started it all. And then it really came, I think, in phases. As I mentioned, Ben McCoy, funny story, my dad and I it was in the spring of '86. I had just graduated from school, college in the fall, December of '85. We were out fishing at Okeechobee, J&S Fish Camp. We're out there fishing, we're putting the boat up or putting it in or taking it out or whatever. And at the boat ramp is Ben McCoy. Well, I recognized him. My cousin played for him when he was at Riviera Beach High. Right. And once again, at the time that all this went down upon Ben's retirement, prior to that, he retired as the winningest coach in Palm Beach County. But I said, that's Ben McCoy over there, And anyway, so long story short, he ended up offering me a job. We went over, started talking to him. Told him I was fresh out of playing, wanted to get into education, wanted to get into coaching. He offered me the job. So that was kind of the starting spot. Right. From there, Dwight Thomas up at Escambia High School in Pensacola, anybody that has had any connection with Panhandle football through the course of years, the introduction to what that is for a young coach in his second or third year was invaluable. And then probably from there, I'd say Joey Wiles at St. Augustine on how to develop and run a program, all the intricacies that go into not just a team, but how do you develop a program. Right. So really, a little bit from everybody that I worked for. Right. And, as an assistant, you take a little bit from everybody, good Absolutely. And bad. And those are probably the main ones.
Explain, you just said a phrase. Panhandle football. Explain that to our audience out here, because it's quite different than what we got here.
It really is. Especially back when I went up there, which would have been, I went to Escambia in the fall of '88. It was at the height of what high school football was in the state of Florida. The community support, the administrative support, the importance that was placed on the game of football in the Panhandle, which was different than probably everywhere else in the state of Florida. The head football coaches were also the athletic directors, which was a little bit unusual, but they primarily were football guys and kind of took care of some of the other things that happened. I walked out, I went in there in the summer for conditioning that was going on, and I was just kind of like open-eyed, with the amount of participation that was at Escambia. We lined up on the first day. I remember it like it was yesterday. We lined up on the first day of two-a-days, and there were 120. There were 12 lines of 10 for stretching. And I'm just sitting there going, boy, I think I'm in the right place. And that year also was the year that Pine Forest High School was the designated. They won the national championship under Carl Madison that year. Martin County actually, Bill Cubitt came up to play them that year. I went to that game. Yeah. That was the first time ever at a high school game where I heard the stadium was so full. Stadium held about 10,000 probably. It was so full that you actually heard a roar. It wasn't like if you go to a high school game, a lot of singular hollering or cheering, but it was almost that collegiate eruption of that sound, And I mean, I'm just sitting there as a young kid, 2 years into it, 3 years into it, and I said, you know what, I'm in the right place for the football atmosphere that I want to learn, cut my teeth on, and those 8 years there, can't be replaced.
Yeah, well, we got some great football down here, but there it's so community orientated. You know, and it's just
it's funny because you say that. Five Flag Speedway is in Pensacola. Okay, it has been there for 100 years or whatever. I mean, the Bushes race there. You know, they have the Snowball Derby there. At Five Flag Speedway, they race every Friday night until September, and then from September through December, they change and they race on Saturday nights, just because of the high school football in the area and the community. They change it. They go from racing on Fridays, football season, they go to Saturday, and that's just an example of how important it is to the community up there. And it was a great experience.
And Escambia had a notable alumnus named Emmett Smith.
Emmett Smith was there and had gone to Florida.
Right.
And Emmett was around a lot, you know, when we were there, and gave back to the program a lot. Quality individual. And it was funny because at the top of Escambia's football field actually sets down in a bowl. So it's the field is down and the bleachers are kind of cut into a hill, and there was an area around the top. And when I was a lot younger, we would jog around the top of there for exercise, and Emmett would come back and he would run with us, you know, periodically. And I asked him, you know, and one day we were just kind of running together, and I said, was it a bigger jump going from Escambia to Florida, or was it a bigger jump going from Florida to the Dallas Cowboys? And I mean, he didn't even bat an eye. He said, going from Florida to Dallas. He said the professional game is so fast, you know, but it's just quality guy. And he was around the kids and gave a bunch of stuff back to the weight room and just, you know, good stuff for kids to see and be a part of.
Yeah, we're very lucky at Centennial. We got Jamar Chaney, who's played for the Eagles, a few other teams, the Broncos, the Raiders. Jamar comes and works out with us all the time.
Makes a difference.
And it's the same way. And I try to tell the kids, there's your role models.
Exactly.
There's your role
That's
models.
exactly right.
Now, as much as you love coaching, what made you want to go to be an athletic director?
Well, some of this stuff maybe I shouldn't say, but I'll go. Yes, this is an education channel. I understand it. When I made a decision to go into administration, and actually Dr. John Prince, who's now assistant superintendent here, was my principal at Palm Beach Gardens High School as I was kind of transitioning from coaching into administration. So I worked underneath Dr. Prince. Anyway, as I was going through the principalship training per se, and the numerous things that are involved in that, some of those things I really liked, and some of those things I kind of was like, you know, I'm not sure about this. Well, during that process of time, as I was working there at Palm Beach Gardens High School as an assistant principal, I found out about the Vero job. And I was kind of taken aback by it, and I really just hadn't really ever thought about going in to be an athletic director, you know, but I was growing up in Palm Beach County. I was very aware of the tradition of Vero Beach High School and what it represented. And I said, you know what, I think I'll kind of stick my toe in the water, because a lot of that position was interesting to me just because of it being Vero Beach High School. And boom, 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 I ended up getting the job, and that kind of started the athletic director portion then. And it tied back in with sports again. It kind of got you out of the curriculum, you know, type thing of a lot of administrative things, and got you back into, you know, the athletic side, which is, when you do something for as long as we have, very comfortable, you know, in that type of position.
Right.
So.
And you know, we have both been doing this a long time, and I always ask this question to every athletic director I have on the show. What do you think your greatest responsibility is as an athletic director?
You know, I thought about it, and I actually put my glasses on because I didn't want to miss it. So I just listed a couple things. The athletic director position is so multifaceted. But as far as, these are just a few of the notes that I wrote down. I think as far as my responsibilities go, I think hiring quality individuals as coaches to work with your kids. I am a firm believer in your athletic department is only going to be as good as the people that are in positions of coaching the kids. I mean, we're going to give direction, we're going to give leadership, we're going to provide financial support, all of those kind of things. But if you get quality people working with kids, your program is going to be successful. That's one thing. The second thing, doing things the right way. You know, following the rules, which are ever changing. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about FHSAA stuff, but it's one thing to try to take shortcuts, and it's, you know what I mean? But I think making sure that everybody understands in the athletic department, in the community, your peers, you know, people that you work with, that win, lose, tie, or draw, we're going to do it the right way. We're going to accept the we're going to accept the result the right way from a sportsmanship perspective, which, you know, Centennial has won a few of those sportsmanship awards as well. So I think that's huge. The third thing, I think, the responsibility of influence that you have over with the coaches, and I think that's your I think that's your job. I think it's your job to mentor. I think it's your job to be a sounding board. I think it's your job to support those individuals. And the last thing that I wrote down is really, and I say this to our coaches at Southfork, is we want to create an environment that people want to be a part of. And I ask them that as a coach. I say, you know, and we'll stand up in these, you know, preseason meetings and those kind of things, and I'll just say, what are you doing? You know, and I'm not asking for a show of hands, but I want everybody to think about this. What are you doing that really would want to make a kid play for you? What about your program is going on that you're drawing people to you? So I think creating that culture in the athletic department as a whole, and that's something that is molded and takes time, but I think those are four things that I wrote down that, from an athletic director's perspective, if I'm looking at what's important to me, something's going to fall somewhere into those four categories.
And I always felt that when I hire a coach, I don't want a coach, I want a teacher. I want a teacher, because that is your main. Anybody can manage. Anybody can write up a lineup. I can take somebody off the street and they can make a lineup. But can they coach that young man or that young woman? And again, one of the things you said, I always try to follow that. Hopefully when somebody enters somebody's program, when they leave, they are a better person.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
absolutely. Totally agree.
One of the big topics I think we need to talk about, and this is something, you know, we probably can do a whole show. I have done whole shows on this, is safety issues in athletics now. What do you think some of the things that we could implement a little bit more about safety issues?
Well, I think on the forefront right now, the buzzword is obviously the concussion.
Correct.
You know, that is kind of taken center stage in the NFL and everywhere else. But more recently, the AED, CPR, the importance of athletic trainers in our schools. We're fortunate in Martin County that we have full-time athletic trainers at each of our high schools, at every practice. They go to games with us, those type of things. But, I mean, whatever topic, I mean, I think there's a fine line, like, for instance, the concussion. And we've been in discussion with FHSAA about different things. And I think the education piece is huge. But I also believe, I know this as a former football coach, if we're really worried about the amount of contact that kids are receiving, education, the proper way to do it, but the only way you're really going to cut back on it, and the only way you're really going to take it out of the coach's hands is, you know, going shorts and helmets. You know, more time with less equipment, you know, but the concussion issue, and I know we were talking a little bit earlier about the AED and the CPR situation with our athletes, and that now is a mandatory piece of paper.
Correct.
That there's a video that our student athletes have to view and their parents have to view on the importance of, you know, those symptoms and those type of things.
That's part of the athletic package too.
It is.
And I know we're very diligent at Centennial that, you know, don't just sign this. Make sure that you have watched it. You're going to prove me. You're going to print out your certificate that you have watched this. I know when we went to the seminar, I think we went together a few years ago out to the West Coast. They brought a doctor on stage, and he was saying exactly what you said. The buzzword is concussions, which is a very serious topic. But more important is the sudden cardiac arrest. What are we doing with that? What are we doing with the heat exhaustion? I know, you know, we had a good friend of ours, Michael Stutzky, up at Sebastian River. you know, a year ago they lost a young man to heat exhaustion, and you always wonder, is there something else you can educate our coaches and our players and our parents about that? Sometimes we feel like we're hampered. I know the Ivy League next year is going to, is it no hitting during the week?
Yeah, they're actually taking it away, I believe.
Yes,
yeah. And I know there was a football guy that coached, I want to say maybe at St. Joseph's or something.
Yes,
never wore equipment. His teams never wore equipment, and the guy won 300 or 400 games. Yeah, whatever it was. So a lot of it, excuse me, a lot of it is kind of breaking the mentality of how things have always been. And the safety issues are just going to continue to become more heightened, I believe. And I think the proper care and the ability to educate not only coaches, players, and I think one of the good things, even with concussions, that they tell you is try to get your players to say to the coach, if Johnny doesn't look like he's right, Johnny don't probably want to come out of the game, but I've got to learn the responsibility that, Coach, John needs to come out. He's out there. He doesn't even know who he is or where he's going or whatever. So there's a lot to it, multifaceted.
And sometimes in tragedy, good things come out. About 14 years ago or around that time, we lost a young lady at our school, Jessica Clinton, passed away.
I remember.
You know, it was a very tragic thing. And her mother, Mrs. Cheryl Lou, has worked diligently throughout the state, and she's the one who has put the AEDs in all the schools.
Absolutely.
And she has the Jessica Clinton Foundation, and again, the awareness that she has given. And she is working on something for free heart screening. And that's something I think down the road, that might be something that the FHSA is going to require also.
Good idea.
You know, down there.
Good idea.
Now, talking about the FHSA, which we could talk for a month on.
My candidacy? No,
it's the ever-changing FHSA. And I know you are in the running for a position up.
Right.
So up there, can you explain that position?
Actually, the state of Florida is divided up into different sections, FHSA-wise, 4 sections. And the board of directors have representation from different places across the state. The Section 3 public seat, which we fall in, all the way over to the West Coast, that position is available. And I have no idea. You know, you always want to try to get yourself in a position where you have a voice, you know, to be able to talk about or maybe deal with some of the things that we're talking about today. Anyway, I threw my name in the hat. We'll see. We'll see what happens. The election.
I made up the pamphlet.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
You know I did that.
The elections are the first week of April, and who knows? But I just think, you know, if you get an opportunity to get in a position to maybe make a difference, go ahead and take it.
Now, let me give you a role here. Suppose you were in charge of the FHSA. What would be the first thing you would implement if you had to make that decision? What would you implement?
Concerning what concerning
would be your
anything?
First, you get in the air and he said, "Okay, now you're Commissioner Tharp." Okay, Commissioner Tharp. What's the first thing you could implement? And we're going to back you 100%.
I think one of the first it would be a difficult. The first thing would be a difficult thing because I think there's two things that are going on that need immediate attention. Number one is the ever-changing need to improve our ability to deal with what we're talking about, sudden cardiac, concussion, injury-related things, that topic of what are we doing the most that we can possibly do to keep our kids as safe as we can possibly keep them. I think that's that's one piece of the puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle, I think, is everything going on in the legislature, which is basically getting ready to create a free agency amongst high school public schools, I think is dead wrong. And I would continue, and I mean, we've been fighting this battle now for 3 or 4 years. You know, I'm a traditionalist in that, you know, and I think us being in it a long time, we're kind of the old school of you live in a community, you grow up in that community, you go to the school, that's who you play for. You know, it doesn't matter if it's the best baseball coach in the county or if it's the worst baseball coach. We're going to represent Centennial High School. We're going to represent Southfork High School to the best of our ability. So those two fronts, to tackle those two items would be a handful.
And I know we have both sat down many times with legislatures, and some of the legislators come back to us and say, okay, you can choose, or parents can choose whatever college they want for athletics. Why can't you choose a high school for athletics? And we try to explain it's just not that easy, because there are rules that are going to be broken that way. You know, so how do we answer some of these parents?
Well, I think it's ever-changing society. I just think that high school athletics is still one of the purest forms of competition that there are. It's as close to being unfiltered as it can get. You know, the colleges get to recruit the players. Hey, John, I want you to come play baseball for me. Here's the money to come do that. At the public high school, and I'm talking public high school primarily, at the public high schools, you get what you get. Here comes your middle school kids in. You develop them as 9th graders, as 10th graders, as 11th. They come through your program. As you said, you want to leave them a better person than they were when they first entered. But it is, there's nothing, there's no agenda there. I mean, if you're good enough to play, you're going to find a spot to go play. What is wrong with the picture of what's going on with people hopping around, in my opinion, is that, what is it? Is it less than 1% or less than 2% of the athletes across the nation are Division I athletes?
Less than 1%.
Less than 1%. Yet, a lot of this legislature that's out there is being born out of, I want my kid to go play for this individual because they have the greatest opportunity to get a college scholarship. And there's just, at the high school, you know, just, to me, there's something wrong with that picture.
And sometimes we don't get the word out to the parents enough, or they don't understand. I think the biggest eye-opening I ever had about this situation is about 10 years ago, Centennial won his first state sportsmanship award. And we went to a banquet, my principal, Mrs. Pike, and some of my coaches, and it was up at the University of Florida, and Billy Donovan spoke. And he said, I want you to tell your parents something from Billy Donovan, who was the coach at Florida now he's the coach at Oklahoma City. He said, you know what? If you got a good player, we're going to find you. I don't care what school you're at. We're going to find you. You know why? Because I got a coach, and he was pointing to his assistant coaches right there. That's his job to find you. You have the grades. You do things the right way. You work hard. And if you're good enough, we're going to find you. I really, really don't care what school you're at. But you got to do it. And again, I think a lot of times...
Great point.
A lot of times these, you know, sometimes these clubs and stuff like that, we're fighting them for, you know, for control of the kids. I think athletics, I mean, let's go back to when you and I started. High school sports would never be televised. You know, now we have, you know, a whole faction, you know, especially in basketball, that don't join any associations. They just play on TV. They bring in 12, 15 kids, and then all of a sudden they're playing for the national championship. And you know what? We used our 28 minutes already.
All right.
But
it goes quick.
It goes very quick. You know, we've been good friends over the years. I hope we're going to get out and play a lot of golf this summer.
We will.
Because I got plenty of time now.
I know it. Good for you. Good for you.
But I want to thank you. I mean, Southfork and Centennial always have had the greatest relationship. I wish you well. I hope you get that job and change things up there. Okay.
Thanks for having me. And good luck in retirement.
I will enjoy it. Okay. I'm still going to do the show.
Okay.
So I'd like to thank everybody for this edition of Hey Coach, and we'll see you next month.